Alright, I don't even really know where to begin with this. I've never really recorded anything for any projects I've made without really a script in mind, but I decided with this next video essay I'm doing, the one on Hollow Knight, which is what you're watching right now, it'd be a good idea to, address and be like, hey, thanks. If you watched the Dark Souls video and subscribed, cool, I appreciate it. And if you feel like sticking around, I'll probably be making more video essays. You'll see a lot more of this kind of stuff, and then I'll drop my stream link in the description, but I don't stream super often just because I'm really busy throughout the day. Either way though, if you feel like subscribing, liking, sharing, feel free. This is why Hollow Knight, in my opinion, is indie perfection. Hollow Knight was developed by the Australian developers Team Cherry and has become one of the biggest indie games of the last decade. Released in 2017 to huge success and creating the most hype I've ever seen for a sequel for an indie game ever, with the follow-up Silksong still not having a concrete release date. The game does so much right, and it's similar to Dark Souls, which I made a video on previously, so this video will probably be really similar in format just due to the way I want to talk about it. First things first, the gameplay has a lot of depth and variety, despite its lack of 3 dimensions. The game is a Metroidvania, which is the combination of Metroid and Castlevania, and takes inspiration in the gameplay from both of these games. The main thing that it takes from these games is a large open world that you progress through by finding different items, such as wall jumping with the Mantis Claw or the Shadow Dash, allowing passage through Shadow Gates. After collecting all of these different movement items, it gives the player access to some of the most fun movement in any game, and it feels really satisfying to fly through levels, dashing, jumping, and slashing enemies. Speaking of slashing, the combat is incredibly in-depth and can feel very rewarding when you get good at it or figure out neat combinations of charms. We'll get to charms later. The majority of the bosses in the game have recognizable patterns that once you learn become really fun to dip and dodge around. Take the dream version of the Soul Master for example. Being able to jump between the fireballs or sneak in quick hits between the teleporting around the master does is incredibly fun. Also, Nightmare King Grim is one of the most exhilarating bosses in the whole game. Quick attacks that require fast reactions and tearing through his patterns is one of the most satisfying things in the whole game. My personal favorite boss is the Sisters of Battle, which is a Pantheon 5 exclusive boss and is one of the most entertaining bosses to fight due to the raw speed of their attacks. Also, because the fight only starts with 1 Mantis and then suddenly switches to 3, the switch in speed is so sick. Overall, each of the bosses in the game is really well designed and super fun to fight. I think the only one that kinda falls off is Fluke Marm, or Marmu, just because they're boring and they're kinda just out of the way. I mean, Fluke Marm's important, but it's not fun to fight. And now back to charms, which I said we'd get back to later. There are charms you can find and equip throughout the world, or that you can get from doing certain quests, that alter different aspects of the way the game is played. From movement to combat, there are a lot of them and they all have very different effects. Quick Slash affects the attack speed of the knight. Strength makes the knight hit harder. The Shaman Stone increases the damage of the spells you can use. Then you have oddball charms like the Dung Defender charm, which just makes your character stinky, or the Fluke charm that makes your Soul Blast into a wad of flukes, which does insane damage. You can even combine some of those oddball charms to do insane damage or create really goofy effects, and sometimes both. Alright, on to the story of Hollow Knight. And the story is actually the reason why I wanted to play Hollow Knight in the first place. I had found this video by another YouTuber by the name of Mossbag. Probably heard of him if you're watching this video. He created a video called The Mostly Complete Lore of Hollow Knight, which sits at a crazy 7.7 million views. Anyways, that video was in my recommendations one day and I decided just to sit down and watch it. I watched the entire thing, and then the next day I bought the game and started playing it. I very quickly racked up around 50 hours into the game, and then as soon as I unlocked the God Home, started playing the hell out of that. Similarly to Dark Souls, it tells its story via item descriptions or dialogue with NPCs, or just things you can find, small cutscenes that play here and there, such as the Void Climb cutscene that happens towards the end of the game. The environments also play a role in the storytelling, the capital city being a great example of this empty, desolate city ravaged by the Radiants, or what the Radiants caused. It still feels grandiose and awe-inspiring despite its emptiness. Then you have the Pale King's Palace, which was this regal palace that in reality is ruins, but is now hidden within the dreams of one of his soldiers. Honestly, I probably won't do the story of Hollow Knight justice explaining it here. I'm probably gonna do like a brief summary. If you want a better explanation, I recommend Mossbag's video. It's super entertaining, super well thought out, super well scripted, everything. Essentially, the story starts with this guy, the Pale King. He used to look like this. He is the ruler of the kingdom of Hallownest, or what once was Hallownest. This game has a lot of Hallows and Hollows in it, it gets really confusing. The Pale King gave the bugs of Hallownest knowledge, or sentience, and they created a great kingdom. In order to do this, he freed them from the Radiance's control. At the same time, the Radiance was preying on the Pale King's downfall. My boy was scheming. In order to combat the return of the Radiance, the Pale King sought a way to seal the Radiance forever. He turned to the forbidden abyss below the kingdom Hallownest, where he could create a vessel that is half bug, half void, and fully devoid of emotions. A Hollow Knight, one might say. Continuing on, the king created the Hollow Knight, which, despite common misconception, the playable character is not the Hollow Knight, and is just referred to as the Knight. Which I guess, it's been like 5 years since the game came out, so most people probably know that. The Hollow Knight then had the Radiance sealed within him, and then he was sealed within the Black Egg within the center of the crossroads, holding the Radiance there for years. And the Black Egg was sealed by the Three Dreamers. However, the Hollow Knight was not a truly empty vessel, and eventually the Radiance began to leak out and infect Hallownest like a plague, which we can see in real time with certain bugs who are normal at the start and are corrupted later on throughout the game. Because of fear or cowardice, the Pale King hid away in his palace, hiding it within the dream, and sat there for the rest of his time. This is where we find Hallownest at the start of the game, broken down with only a few safe areas left, and many of the bugs in the kingdom fighting anything on sight. It's in chaos.
Kana Sagamos.
I was gonna do a 3-segment video, similar to the Dark Souls one I did. However, I didn't really know if I should do like a world building segment for Hollow Knight, just due to the fact that most of the story stuff that I talked about happens before the game anyways. So I think I'm just going to dedicate this 3rd segment to things I like about the game, things that don't really fit within a category but are just kind of cool and neat, and I think should just be talked about. First off, the DLC for Hollow Knight was completely free. There were 4 of them, and anyone who owns Hollow Knight can play them. So anyone can fight the Nightmare Troop or enter the God Home. Speaking of the God Home, which I mentioned earlier, the God Home is home to the Pantheons of Hallownest, which are boss rush modes that are unlocked once you defeat all of the featured bosses. After beating the first 3 Pantheons, you unlock the God Seeker mode. It's a separate save file mode that drops you straight into the God Home with all charms, upgraded spells, and the upgraded nail. It also unlocks all possible boss fights, even the Pantheon exclusive ones. Finally, once you beat the game, you unlock Steel Soul mode, which allows you to play the game on super hard mode. It is essentially permadeath with some other changes that revolve around the death mechanic from the normal mode. When you die in Hollow Knight, a shade is created in your place that holds all of your money and half of your soul container. In the normal mode, there's a character called Confessor Gigi, who if given a rancid egg will summon the shade for you to kill and get your stuff back without having to go find it. However, in Steel Soul mode, that character is replaced by Steel Soul Jin, who will buy rancid eggs off of you. Alright, I think that's all I wanted to talk about with this game. It's easily one of my favorite games that I've ever played, and I'm beyond hyped for Silksong. When it comes out, I'm probably not going to be going outside for a while. And if you like Metroidvanias and haven't played Hollow Knight, I highly recommend. It's not super expensive, and Silksong's right around the corner. And I already have a few ideas for my next video. I'll let people guess it in the comments if they feel like it. And yeah, if you don't mind liking and subscribing, that'd be pretty cool too. Thanks.